Hey everybody, so today on the old motorbike what I'm going to do is take the gas tank off, and the reason for that is I want to have the fuel pump rebuilt. There's actually, to my knowledge, nothing wrong with the fuel pump at the moment, but my bike's coming up on about 95,000 kilometers and I thought this might be a good thing to have done over the winter so I don't have to worry about it come spring. So to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to pull off these side panels, and then under here there's a hex bolt on either side, and we're going to take the seat off. So we're going to get started with that. So in order to get the tank off, you got to get that bolt out. That's an 8mm Allen wrench. And then up here, these should just pop off. Looks like they got a few bugs and stuff in there, and there's one of these on either side. So there's 3 bolts that hold the tank on. Now, there's also going to be fuel lines and electrical stuff under here that we'll mess with after. So before I put my bike away this fall, I rode it and basically until the fuel light came on. So not a lot of fuel in there, which is great. You don't want to have to be messing with a whole bunch of fuel in here. Okay, so we got the tank undone. Now when I lift this up, hopefully you're not blinded by the lights there, but you can see there's going to be a fuel line and some wiring. I'm guessing that's for the fuel pump. And that fuel line, I believe, comes down into here. It's that one with the hose clamp on it, I think. Now, unless I'm mistaken, that looks like there's a fuel drain petcock right there, which, if that's the case, boy, would that ever be handy. Let's just take a look and see what we got in here. But these 2 guys right here are just vacuum lines, and they're attached to the tank. So I'm just going to unplug those, and then basically I'm going to try and undo the fuel line, plug it with my finger, take the tank off so that I can drain it. Probably easier said than done, but these guys should be just a press fit. So I got those 2 lines out. They just pull out, gently pull them out, because this top part here is hard plastic and they go into a rubber casing there. I think one's an overflow line if you have too much fuel in your tank, and the other one might be an air intake. I'm not 100% sure. However, they just pop out of there. So the only thing I have left is to get that fuel line off and attempt to take the tank off without spewing gas everywhere. So let the comedy begin. Okay, so after a little bit of cursing, I got the gas tank off. So with this electrical thing here, there's just this little flap. You just got to kind of pull this flap back and pull those 2 things apart. It comes apart pretty easy. I had originally wanted to try and take this fitting off here, but I couldn't get it to move. It's kind of a bit wiggly because it's on these rubber mounted things that go into this brass part, and I didn't want to run the risk of breaking or cracking anything. Not to mention I can't get my fingers in there because these are the oil cooler lines that come through there. So this guy attaches right underneath to the bottom of the tank. And I was able to get my meat hooks in there and pry that one off. And you end up having to take that one off, I think, anyways, when you get the fuel pump out. So I've got the fuel tank off. There's not a lot of fuel in it. I've set it upside down. It doesn't seem to be leaking. You can see here, that's where that hose goes. There's your electrical plug-in. Here's your drain and your vacuum. Now the fuel pump is down inside here, I can get my light to stay up there. So the fuel pump is actually in here. So this is the electricity for the fuel pump. That's where it pumps it out. This is your access port, and of course you kind of gotta get in there. So this tank isn't huge. That's going to be a real bear to get at. So you got a grasshopper in there or something. So this ought to be a real good time. But I got the tank off, so step one complete. Now I just got to get the fuel pump out. So I thought I was going to have enough time to pull that fuel pump out of my tank today. And even if I did, I actually have to send it away to get it rebuilt. So what I've done is I've just cut the fingers off of a rubber glove and taped them onto that fuel line hose. And I did the same thing over here. Because this thing's full of gas, I don't want my garage to get full of gas fumes. Now once I pull the pump out, I'll have to kind of temporarily plug these holes. It'll probably be a couple weeks to send it away, have it rebuilt, and come back. But fingers from a rubber glove work well to seal things up. Alright, so now we're going to try and pull this fuel pump out of here. But the first thing we've got to do is we've got to open up this access port. Now, I've spent a little time and I've cleaned off as much crud around here as I can, because obviously I don't want that ending up in my gas tank. But this little holder, you just squeeze it together, comes out pretty easily. Now trying to get this thing out is generally a pain. There's a couple of rubber seals on it, and that's good because it should be sealed up. So let's just make sure we get... Now, they do have a hole here and it's threaded. This is an 8.8 millimeter metric bolt, and it just screws in there. Now, sometimes these things come out really easy, and other times they don't. So, first step, we're just going to screw that all the way in so we don't strip the threads off. And let's just see if we can't pull it out. Nope. So we're going to have to go to method 2. Bear with me. Basically, I want to screw this bolt back in there. I know it goes in there. There we go. So it's in there pretty well. Now I'm just going to pull up on this side here, ever so gently. Holy cow, that's really in there. There, so I heard a little bit of air come out, so I'm guessing there's a little bit of a pressure difference, but I got the seal popped on it anyway. So now we'll just use our handy dandy wrench, and as we screw this in, should pop that thing right out of there. Just be careful you don't scratch paint on your tank. If you have a piece of PVC, but you need about 6-inch PVC, which I was not able to find, then you could use that probably better than this method. Alright, so after some intense swearing and a little bit of bodily injury, I think I managed to get this out of here. You may have noticed when I pulled it out, I'd popped the one side out, so I kind of got it skewed in there and I had to mess around with it, and of course now it comes out. So got that out. Let's just make sure that is no damage to it. Give that a little wipe. Now what you're going to notice is there's actually a fair amount of fuel in there. Now even though I ran this down till the fuel light came on, I got a lot of fuel in there. Obviously fuel can be a hazard, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to siphon that off into a jerry can. That way I don't have to mess around with something dangerous. So give me a few minutes and we will get that done. Alright, so I finished siphoning out the tank, and lucky for me I didn't swallow any, so that's a pretty rare occurrence. This is a 5-liter gas can, and there's probably about 4 liters in there. So when the light came on, I was riding, it would kind of come on and off depending if I was going uphill or downhill. And when I started it and it was kind of leaned over on its kickstand, the light was on. So, not that I'm saying push your luck, but you got between 3 and 4 liters left in your tank when that light comes on, so ride appropriately. Okay, so now the fun part gets going here. We've drained most of the fuel out. Now I got to take off this nut. Got to take off the rubber finger from the glove here. This nut, and basically that's what's holding the fuel pump in there. So let's find ourselves some wrenches and get a start on this bad boy. If we push down on these, now be careful we don't lose these rubber seals into the tank. There we go. So now that they're loose, we're going to take those off of there. There we go. All right, now the fun begins. Okay, now here is one of my filters, which is pretty dark, which does not fill me with confidence. Now, once you figure out how to get it out, remind yourself how you did it, because it's got to go back in the exact same way. Because now I don't know what I'm caught on in here. Oh, it's that wiring harness, that's what it is. So let's get that out, pop that out. All right, now I'm just going to let that drip for a bit. That, my friends, is your Victory Vegas 2007 fuel pump. Now, as I said earlier, my fuel pump is still working. I went on a bike trip in 2018. I had some electrical issues, but that's not related to this. When we got into Golden, Colorado, it was really hot that day. We were high elevation. My bike did not overheat, but my fuel pump was making some noise because when I shut the bike off, I think all the engine heat went up into the gas tank. It sounded funny. I went to a dealership. He said it was just the altitude and the heat, and quite frankly, when my bike cooled off, it worked fine. Only seem to get that issue when it's like super hot out. Like I'm talking above 40 degrees Celsius, which I find really hot being in Canada. Anyway, I don't suspect that my fuel pump is worn out. Mind you, it does have a lot of miles. So what I want to do is just get it rebuilt because I cannot find one anymore. Unfortunately, they don't make a lot of parts for these. So I'm going to have it rebuilt, and hopefully it'll be good for another 100,000 kilometers. Much of the video that I recorded next does not have audio. My microphone decided to crap out on me and I hadn't realized it, so I have a whole bunch of video with no audio. That is, however, okay, because that'll save you from having to hear the wails of my anguish coming up.
Ah, crap!
Hey all, so welcome back after a couple week hiatus here. We are back putting the fuel pump back into my motorbike. So, what happened? Well, there's a brass fitting that goes in here, and that's the one that pokes up through this hole here. And in my eagerness to get my bike put back together, I over-torqued it. Now, why did I do that?
Because I'm an idiot. Happy?
Yeah, pretty much. It's brass. It's obviously not very big and can't take a whole lot of force. So, a couple notes for those of you who own a Victory motorcycle. Now, mine's a 2007. It's a Vegas. And I believe they changed a few things in 2008, one of them being the fuel pump and the way it goes into the tank. For those of you who have an 07 and older, they do not make these assemblies anymore. You cannot find these. This little part, which is like, it's almost like a brass plumbing fitting, is, might be worth $5 or $10. You can't find these. Your only options are to find a used fuel pump assembly off of, say, eBay or something. And I found one on there for $350 US plus shipping. So by the time I get it to Canada, you're talking $500. So a $500 part. Wonderful. The other option, the only other option I've been able to find, and this was a suggestion from my lovely wife, was talk to a machinist. And personally, I didn't think a machinist would be interested in something so small, but money talks. So I had a machinist make me a new one. That cost me $150. Now, I'm not upset about that. The machinist has a skill I needed. It was a one-off part. He had to do it by hand. Not to mention, this guy's obviously very skilled, so that goes in just lovely. And it fits into my fuel pump just lovely. So, a warning to those of you with this style of fuel pump: don't break these pieces. Do not over torque them. You'll have a hell of a time finding it. I've been just irritated as hell with myself the last little while because of this, but I have a solution. If you do happen to go down this road, find a good machinist. Won't be cheap, but at least your bike's back on the road. All right, now that I'm done kicking myself, let's get this thing put back together. So there is a stepped rubber washer that goes on this guy here. Hopefully I can... Okay, and make sure it gets on there nice and flat. Okay, so that goes on there. Now these are the two seals that are inside the tank. Now once these things come through, there will be seals that go on the outside, as well as a steel washer and some fittings. Now the fun part is we got to get this bad boy in there without making a mess of it. Getting this back in. And I think, oh, great. Now I have it stuck. There we go. Now just gently get that down in there. Okay, so I got this wire harness fed through. I had to kind of really awkwardly reach into the tank and kind of feed that through. Basically what happens now is you have a rubber seal washer, goes on the outside of this one. And then on top of that goes metal washer. And top of that goes this brass fitting. Now I'm just going to put it on finger tight to kind of hold it in place for the moment. And then I'm going to put on rubber seal. Now next goes on this rubber seal. Forgot the steel washer. How does it feel with the wrench? Feels pretty snug. I don't want to bust that thing again. It's pretty tight. That's pretty tight. We want to put this guy back in. Now I have new seals for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change out these seals. So in order to get these seals off, I've got these handy little pick tools. And they allow you to kind of get sort of down under the seal here. I don't want to tear it. They just allow me to just kind of... So let's take our first seal. Okay, so I got it in the first part here. Let's just roll her down to the second. Seal number 2. It's on just like that. Okay, so all I've got here is I've just got some wheel bearing grease. And I'm just going to put just a touch on these seals so that you don't have dry rubber on metal and end up tearing your seals. And of course that would be bad here, so I'm just going to get, shouldn't take much, just a little bit, and just grease those seals up a bit. Now, it's obviously a petroleum-based substance, so if any gets in your gas tank, you know, the gasoline should thin it out, and it shouldn't cause any kind of a problem. So we're just going to line this up. Now, if you push one side in, it's probably not going to go in well. I felt the first seal go in, second seal go in. That feels like she's in. And then all you got to do is put this retainer clip back in there. And you want to make sure that's seated properly, because the last thing you want is that sucker to come out on you when you're rolling down the highway. Now I just want to set this in place. Alright, so I've dumped an extra 5.5 liters of gas in there just to make sure that fuel pump's, you know, under fuel, underwater, so-called. And I haven't seen any leaks or anything like that. That's always a good sign. So I mean, the tank itself is sealed. Now obviously I need to see this thing under pressure. So I'm going to put the battery back in it and fire it up.
It's alive!
Sounds damn good. I want to go for a ride. Too bad it's February. Damn. Well, that feels good to get that in. So now I gotta put the, secure the tank, make sure that's all on there properly. I'll take the battery back out, put the seat on, and then unfortunately, put the cover back on her till the snow melts.